Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this week's webinar, Reflection to Action, the Journey to a Healthy Business. The presentation will begin in just a few minutes, but before we get started, I want to make sure that all of our systems are running smoothly. I want to make sure that you can hear me, make sure that you can see the screen properly. If there's anything that seems a little off, you can go ahead and put that in the chat box, and we'll make sure to get that fixed right away. And while you're at it, I would love to know where you're watching from. We usually get people from all around the country, and I think it's pretty interesting to see where everyone's at. I'm coasting from Baltimore, Maryland. And Mark, where are you joining us from?
I'm actually down in Washington, D.C.
Oh, there you go. I was there yesterday, seeing the cherry blossoms. Chicago, very nice. All right, I'm going to launch a poll, and I'm going to share my screen again. Would you like to see your business grow? If you're happy with where your business at, that's great. Mark will still help you, give you some tips on how to make it even better. But if you do want to see your business grow, we would like to know, so that way Mark can really focus in on the key things that it's going to take to make your business get to where you want it to be. Perfect. It looks exactly like what me and Mark were expecting. Most of you are really wanting to see that business grow, and Mark is going to walk you through those steps today. I would love to introduce you to Mark Richardson. Mark Richardson is a highly regarded pioneer in developing standards for professionalism in the remodeling industry. After more than 30 years as Case Design Remodeling as president and co-chairman, one of the leading remodeling organizations in the industry, he has a high demand as a national speaker, advisor, and author, and he has graciously accepted the opportunity to do a webinar for you today. Mark, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to let you go ahead and put your slideshow up here so we can get this started.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Mark Richardson, and thank you, Madeline, for a nice introduction. Before I get into the meat of my presentation, I want to give those watching or listening a little bit of a snapshot about myself. Oftentimes I'm introduced in terms of more accolades and experiences and those kind of things. But, at the end of the day, I'm a remodeler. I'm a home improvement guy, just like many of you. Had an opportunity coming out of architecture school to partner up with a fellow, Fred Case, who had a small construction company, and we were able to grow that. Then we diversified into handyman services, a bath division of the company, a kitchen division, and then a national business, franchise business. And then in 2008, I stepped down. We were just shy of about 100 million in revenue, and then became co-chairman of the company. And since then, I've written several books on business related topics. And a little bit of background on this particular book and this webinar today, How Fit Is Your Business? Many years ago, I started to talk about business fitness and actually created, a book before this called the 30-Day Remodeling Business Fitness Program. And I actually was out speaking on the subject to many out there. And we found that as I was speaking to it, it was great to have a formula, but fundamentally, a lot of companies didn't even know what fit is. So I went back and I wrote a book, and coming more from design and coming more from architecture, I kind of designed this formula based on using kind of the metaphor of health and fitness and business fitness together. And as a result of that, and this is what we'll get into today, is I created a 10-point fitness checkup that we'll actually do today with you, and will be able to score your business. And with that score, you'll be able to know what to specifically focus on and really point to within your business. Unfortunately, there's a lot of remodeling businesses out there that, are very competent, good, hardworking people, but fundamentally are not very fit. So one of the questions I think you have to ask yourself at the beginning of all this is, why don't we know about health and fitness when it comes to our business? Well, The reality is most of you in the remodeling or home improvement, you got into the home improvement business because of certainly passion for the craft, wanting to start a little business, or coming from a little bit more of a design background, whatever the origin. However, for most businesses, they didn't go to university. They weren't like an accountant or a doctor or an architect. They came into this business, kind of learning it and evolving in business, not by design. So this notion of, how fit is your business is not necessarily something you should have known because you're never taught. And therefore, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So what's interesting about this topic is I've reflected on it. When I ask audiences all the time, when it comes to your health and fitness, how would you define it? What are those elements that you would highlight? Almost everybody in the audience really knows. It could be about, the physical appearance in terms of, weight. It could be about the stamina. It could be about other elements when it comes to mental well-being in terms of fitness. However, when it comes to your business, one thing I oftentimes ask is, what are some of the successful elements? And almost everybody really gravitates just about profitability. But, profitability in business is just a product of a result. It's a result of things. Your ability to, do something if you're healthy and fit physically, it's a result of that. And I think when it comes to your health and personal fitness, we've been bombarded since we were children, what that looks like and feels like, and that's why we're successful. So what we're going to do over the course of the next half hour or so, we're going to do a little fitness checkup. And this is like going to the doctor and getting your cholesterol checked and your blood pressure checked. And we're going to walk you through kind of specifically a 10-point checkup on your business. So I say 10 points because just like when it comes to your health, you might have very low blood pressure, but your cholesterol is too high. Well, if your cholesterol is too high, you need to focus on that before you have to be medicated, because, you might have some elements of your health that's especially strong, but if you're not putting the focus on the right piece of the business, then you're probably not going to be very successful. So here's what we're going to do. And this is going to be very tough for some of you out there that are chomping at the bit, that already want to start to score yourself. What I want to do is I'm going to put up a slide for each one of these 10. Now, here's the rules of the game. I do not want you to score the business until I finish with the bullets on that specific category. And I'll ask you at that time, think about holistically everything I've just talked about and give one score per slide. And that one score is 10 being the best and 1 being the worst. Now, if you're struggling, it's between 6 and 7 or 8, 9. Go ahead and say 8.5 or 6.5. Don't worry, a fraction is not going to throw off anything in terms of ultimately, your score in this system. So the first one I want to talk about, again, put your pens down, is what I call knowing your numbers. Knowing your numbers is kind of like, all the elements that are wrapped around like a dashboard of the car. So the way I'd like to think about, and I want you to think about knowing your numbers, is your business guided by the numbers? Or are you just winging it based on, depending on the weather, depending on what clients are asking you to do? Second is, do you review your numbers? Do you track, for example, your lead flow numbers? You track your sales, track your close rates, track all the key numbers on a weekly basis. Do you have a solid plan? And do you track it? The next one is, do you know your history? Do you know your history? Now, history, the wonderful thing about history is it doesn't lie. So I oftentimes, when I'm talking and working with modelers or home improvement contractors, I say, let's look at the trailing 12, the last 12 months. Well, if you don't know your history going back 12 months, 24, 36 months, it's very hard to have a really, really clear understanding of how well you're doing today. And then the next one is, are your actual versus estimated cost or numbers within 5%? So it could be budget numbers, could be project cost numbers. This is all about being able to predict. So what I want you to do now is score your business, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, on knowing your numbers. So just take a moment, think about that, and score your business. Okay, number two. Number two is your systems and processes. Now, systems and processes obviously are different than knowing your numbers, as well as some of the other things we'll talk about. So again, don't give yourself a score quite yet. The first element is, are they written down? Are the processes in your business written down? For example, a lead management process, a sales process, a sales management process, or even production processes. You know, are they written down? Another indication of, I think, health when it comes to systems and processes, that they're not dependent on individual personalities. The next one is, do you have a consistent way to evaluate, specifically evaluate different team members? Is the client experience process a process that is actually a documented process of what you want that white glove experience to be? And do you have ways to communicate that you really see those touch points of communication as really part of your process? So what I want you to do now, score the business, 10 being the highest when it comes to systems and processes, and 1 being the lowest. Okay, number 3 on the list is your leadership. And leadership is not just about you as the leader, it's the leadership within your company. You know, leadership is not oftentimes just a person, it's more the leadership mindset. It's more how the overall company looks at leadership within the business. So is there a sense of vision within the business? Do you know kind of where you're heading? Are you heading to the mountains or the seashore in terms of the business? Good communication. Do you feel like there's a good level of communication from leadership to the rest of the team? Are you clear in terms of what the goals and the targets are in terms of priorities? Do you feel like the leadership is truly unselfish, almost more of a little bit more of a servant leadership mindset? Is there a clear sense of purpose when it comes to leadership? Now, what's the purpose of this business? What is it that we run? Real core focus on values and the purpose. Is there strategic thinking behind the leadership, not only decisions, but the strategies that are necessary to execute? Is the leadership within the business well respected, not just by the team, but also in the community, both the local community, but also the industry? And lastly, but a little bit more slang, everybody's heard this, do you feel like the leadership kind of walks their talk? Or are they sitting in kind of that bubble and kind of performing in independent from the business? So when it comes to leadership, rank your business, 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. Okay, number 4 on our fitness checkup is your team. Now, when I ask audiences all the time, raise your hand if you think you have a kind of a world-class team. You can imagine almost all the hands go up. So I don't want you to think about this globally. I want you to look at and think about my individual bullets to come up with a really realistic, healthy score. So the first one is, do you feel like you have strong performers? You know, is there a high retention rate among the team members? Are they sticking with you? Or are you seeing some, you know, a lot of turnover? Do you feel like there's good synergies between different individuals in different departments? Do they want to grow with you? You know, how do you know that? Well, have they ever asked you that question? You know, where will I be in 3 years, 5 years? What does that look like for me? Usually that's an indication that they want to kind of get on this train for growth? Do you feel like there's a gung-ho attitude and kind of team spirit? Do you consistently exceed expectations, both within the team and for certainly each other, but also for your clients? Is there a commitment to constant improvement? You know, one of the things that it's a real good indicator of a good team is them investing in themselves to get better. And last and certainly not least, but is accountability. Do you feel like each individual team member really is clear and aligned on what their accountability is to the overall organization? So score the business, 10 being the highest on the category of team and 1 being the lowest. Okay, number 5, we're almost halfway through the checkup here. Your product. Similarly to team, if I ask most audiences all the time, do you make a really good product or project? Then most of the time the answer is yes. However, I don't want you to just assume that in this scoring system. I want you to really listen to what these bullets are. The first one is, do you give high quality advice and service? You know, is it a well-defined product and service in terms of size and type of projects? You know, I find sometimes, you know, remodelers are all over the place. They're chasing all the shiny objects and they're not necessarily kind of laser focused on the right products and services. You know, is there consistent client experience in your product? Is that a predictable thing, just like many of the other elements of the business? Is there on-time delivery? If you go back last 10 projects, or at least 9 of them, if not 10 of them, delivered back to the client on time? Is there a clear demographic of your client? Do you know, for example, that different professions, the economic kind of demographics? Do you know kind of the locations? Do you know what the client eats for breakfast and their family structure? You know, the more you understand, I think, the client, the more you understand your product. And do you have predictable results? You know, one of the things I oftentimes ask when I'm working with individual companies is, you know, are these results as you predicted? It's not a matter of, you know, having a great month or quarter, but is that what you predicted to be? That's usually a good indication of a good product. So score the business under the category of product, 10 being the highest, using these criteria and 1 being the lowest. Okay, number 6. Number 6 are the results. Some people would kind of think of results of a lot of business as just the profits, but results are certainly, profits are certainly part of the results themselves. So the first thing is, are your results as you predicted them to be? Really think about that. I'm much more impressed with someone who predicts, for example, a 9% net profit and ends up at 9 than someone predicts a 5% profit and ends up at 12. You know, that just shows they're not very proficient at planning things necessarily. So are your results, overall results, profitability or others, as you predicted them to be? Are your, you know, is your thinking short and long-term kind of in balance? You know, you've got to think of the business short, medium, and long-term and find that balance. Do you find, for example, consistency and balance? Is it consistent month-to-month improvement? Now, you may not have, for example, the best quarter, but the real question is, how does that quarter compare to the previous quarter and the previous quarter? If you can see the stock kind of rise consistently month to month to month, that's a very positive sign as it relates to the health of your business. So when it comes to results or profitability, you know, all those outcomes in your business, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the process of getting there, it's the outcome as well. Score your business, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. Okay, number 7 on my fitness checkup is what I classify or put in the category of your stress. Now, this is not stress on you. This is stress in the business itself. You know, business is kind of a living thing and it has levels of stress, as you're well aware of, at least when I pointed out. Think of this like a rubber band. You know, rubber band that has no stress and limp doesn't do you any good. A rubber band that's stretched to the point where it snaps is also not good. So this is the right level of stress in the business, not necessarily too much or too little. So here's some indications of ways to think about the stress. Do you make time? Make time for your family, your friends, yourself. You know, are you able? And the key word here is able. Limit the hours to 50 to 60 hours per week. Now, if you happen to be one that's so passionate and that you want to work 60 to 70 and you don't feel like it's out of control, that's fine. If on the other hand, you want to limit your hours to 40 hours a week, the key is, what are you able to do? Will the business allow it to happen? You know, do you control your day rather than your day controlling you? You know, that's a good indication of a healthy stress. One of the reasons I wrote the book on the art of time mastery was that I felt like that was a fundamental thing that businesses needed to focus on, and that is the mastery of time. Proactive versus reactive is under control. You know, I usually recommend about 80% of your time be proactive that you control versus 20% of your time it's controlled by others. It's never going to be 100% proactive, and therefore finding that right balance and blend, I think, has a lot to do with the right stress. You know, Michael Gerber talked about this little adage: do you have time to work on the business, not just in the business? Very, very important. Make time for improvement. You know, I think a good indication of stress is that if you're running so fast and furious and you're not ever making time to improve, to read a book, to listen to an audio, to watch even a webinar like this, then probably your level of stress is not where it needs to be. So again, score yourself, score the business. 10 being the worst level of stress, 10 being the best level of stress, and that's that rubber band and the right level of tension, and then 0 being the worst level of stress. Okay, number 8, just a few more to go here, and then I'll talk about what these scores mean. Number 8 is your reputation. Now, a lot of people are surprised that I would even use this as one of the criteria, but I think the reputation, I think, has a lot to do with, you know, just how you're perceived in the community, and certainly has a lot to do more than anything right now, is becoming more of a magnet for people out there, not just a net that you throw out. So when it comes to your reputation, I want you to think about it this way: well respected in the industry and the market. Do you have raving fans for clients? Are you easily able to hire employees? And I know that may be shocking to some of you that are really, really struggling, but there are companies out there that, because of their reputation, they really are very attractive to employees to be able to come on board and become team members. Do you have a high referral rate when it comes to your clients? You know, are the local and national media interested in you? This is a little bit more indirect, but what I will say is the media tends to be very risk adverse. They don't want to work with companies that don't have a good reputation, because that certainly puts a mark on them. And then lastly, do the alliances or the vendors, do the subcontractors, do the suppliers seek you out as opposed to you having to find them? So again, 10 being the best reputation, the highest, and 1 being the lowest. So go ahead and give yourself a score. And as I said earlier, if you're struggling between a 7 and an 8, give yourself a 7.5. That's certainly fine. Okay, 2 more to go. This one also is a little bit more thought-provoking for some, but I think it's pretty straightforward. And the fundamental question in positioning is, how well positioned are you? How well positioned is the company? If you really think about this, you know, think about it like an athlete going into a particular, now how well positioned are them? A team, how well positioned are them are they to compete? So here's a way to think about it. Is the business stable and consistent? Do you feel the business has a strong market awareness, kind of ear to the ground? Is the business well capitalized? Now, this is not just having a war chest that's a giant amount of cash. This is being able to make decisions based on, the best business decision on how much cash is in your pocket. Healthy bottom line is really, really important. Do you have a good business plan and marketing plan? Any business that wants to be positioned is going to have a plan. Think about this like remodeling projects. It's probably not going to be very successful if you're not having a plan. Are you investing in technology? Technology is so critical. I used to talk about it, it'll revolutionize this industry. Now I generally say it already has. Those companies that are technology equipped and enabled, those are the ones that are the winners right now. Mentoring up and coming leaders in your business. That's so important. Think about who is it that will sit in your seat in the future. If you're not putting the time and energy into them, you're probably not being very successful. So score your business, 10 being the highest on the positioning and 1 being the lowest. Okay, number 10 on my list of 10 criteria for a healthy business is your relationships and your alliances. Now, again, many people, when they think about the health of the business, they don't necessarily put this right up there towards the top. But I do want you to think about it. While it may not be, quite as important as leadership or profitability or the team, it's definitely one of the things that separates, I think, the great ones from the good ones. Great businesses have very strong alliances and relationships. So here's how you want to think. Do you have them with other professionals? An alliance is someone that I like to use. I don't even like to use the word vendor very often, but the alliance is someone that, you can see as kind of a partner. So do you have these alliances? Second thing is, one thing to have them is, do you have regular communication? Do you get together and have lunch, or do you have phone calls and talk about creative things? And then you're always seeking out synergistic opportunities with alliances. How can you work together to get kind of 1 + 1 = 3? Is that a big part of your mindset with these relationships and alliances? Or are you out by an island by yourself? If you're out on an island and you don't have any alliances, then you probably should score yourself fairly low. If, on the other hand, you're one of these companies that is very passionate and spending time and energy on these relationships, then you will find, I think, that you can score yourself a little higher. So, having said that, everything that we just went through, and actually I'm going to go back to the beginning real quick and just give you a quick summary of what we just went through, and then we're going to talk about what these scores are. So the first one I looked at was knowing your numbers. Then we went down and we talked about systems and processes. Number 3 was your leadership. The leadership, think about that in terms of the importance of that. Number 4 was all about the team. Number 5 was your product. Number 6 is the results, oftentimes the profitability. Number 7 is, again, it's the best level of stress. It's that rubber band that is stretched, but not necessarily too far or too limp. Reputation is so important for a healthy business. Number 8, number 9 is how well positioned you are for the future. And then number 10 is your alliances and strategic relationships. So what I want you to do now is score the business. I want you to literally, in the list of things I went down, 1 through 10, have a number next to each. And now I want you to add up all those numbers. And they're going to give you a total of these 10 criteria. If your number's over 10 or over 100, you should go back and you're challenged probably with math. But whatever that number is, just add up all those numbers that we just went over. And the next thing I want to do is I want to talk to you a little bit about the scores, and then we'll have a little time for Q&A. Okay, so for those of you that have added up those numbers, now I want to talk about what these scores mean. You know, it's great to do an exercise like this, but if you don't know what those scores add up and mean, then quite frankly, it's just been kind of an interesting exercise as opposed to one that you can put into place. You know, when I work with individual companies, we tend to focus very specifically on the scores that are a little bit weaker than others. You know, and the irony of all that is that because you're so passionate about modeling or design, sales, or developing these projects, oftentimes we put more and more time and energy into the things we love, not necessarily the things that we're weakest at. You know, I see this with athletes all the time. You know, the professional athlete focuses on their weakness, not necessarily just their strength. So if your score was 85 or above, keep doing what you're doing. That's a very strong score. I remember years ago within my business, and we scored it the first time, I think the average score was right around 89 or 90. So what that said was, it's almost like going to the doctor, is that you're doing fine. You know, just make sure that you come back next year for an annual checkup, because this is not a static exercise. Your health, just like when it comes to your personal and fitness and health, is something that varies. You need to do an annual checkup for yourself. So literally make a point to put this on your schedule to watch this, the recording of this webinar a year from now, or, you know, certainly you can pick up a copy of my book, or certainly the folks from LEAP will send it to you so you have a record of this. The next thing is 75 to 84, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. Focus on any scores that are below 5, however, with an action plan. So say, for example, when you did this, you know, you thought, for example, your product, your team, even your leadership, they were all very, very high scores. They were 7, 8s, and 9s. However, when it came to your strategic alliances, you know, you gave yourself a 3. Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to make a point to get on the phone and call some of my suppliers, have lunch with some of my subcontractors. Maybe I set up a little meeting with all of my strategic alliances so that they can see where you're heading as a group. And if you do that, you'll see that score inch up. You'll see it inch up, and before you know it, you'll have that score in a better place. Okay, if your score is 65 to 74, you're average. Now, I don't mean that to offend anybody, because I'm sure you don't think of yourself as average, but the business is average. You know, now it's time to put your ego aside, find a mentor, a coach, a peer group, find something that will help you from the outside, not just the inside, be better. If your score is 55 to 64, now's time to commit. Commit to improvement now. It's not a matter of just finding a coach, or it's not a matter of just looking at 1 or 2 of the scores. Now it's time to have a plan. You've got to commit, and you got to monitor that plan and that progress, you know, on a monthly basis. You're certainly not necessarily yet in the danger zone, but if you don't start to, that stock's going to continue to slip, and it's going to be a challenge. So 45 to 54, bring your team together. Now it needs to be a little bit more of a team sport. You can't carry it on the bag and on your back. And the first thing you want to determine is, you know, were some of my scores in this, were they false positives? So if you ask your team member to do the scores and you find, for example, your score was 52, but they're up at 70 or 68, then maybe you're, you know, looking the business a little bit wrong. However, if they end up still in that 45 to 55 range that you are, then that's probably time to have group team meetings for improvement. Okay, now we're really getting down there. 35 to 44. I would say now you're getting to be in serious trouble. It's not a matter of just a coach at this point. Now you really want to bring in those key advisors like your accountant, like your attorney, to come into the business and really analyze and have discussions with you about the results and really kind of advise you at this point. Advise you what is going to get you through this, because in these times that are a little bit of go-go times out there, if you're experiencing these low scores, then that's not good. Below 35, maybe it's now time to look for another business out there to go work for. Now, oftentimes I get chuckles from audiences when I bring that up, but the reality is many small business owners really should be working for someone else. You know, you don't love necessarily the financial administrative part of the business. You don't necessarily have the same sales skills that someone else, you know, and maybe what you need to do is find the thing that you're really good and passionate about and go work for another business to do that, you know, because the reality is it's your team members and certainly your family's at jeopardy in terms of how you're doing. So I'm going to summarize what we've talked about here by a simple thing. You know, you're in a business that has very excellent opportunity, meaning you have an opportunity to make great quality products, have a really strong team. I think it's safe to say homeowners are not going to all of a sudden start doing things themselves or go live in some sort of cave or something. They're always going to need your help. So it's a choice on how you approach things. It's not going to be the environment that keeps you from being successful. It's really going to be you. So with all that being said, I want to thank you for certainly listening to this, and I'll turn it back over to Madeline. And maybe if you do have a particular question, we have a few minutes, we'll be able to address those as well.
Mike, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. Everyone on this call will be receiving a copy of How Fit Is Your Business. So for all of you folks that are attending right now, just make sure you keep a lookout for an email from Leap asking you for your address so we can get that book sent over to the right place for you. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Does anyone have any questions for Mark? If you do, you can go ahead and put those in the chat box now. Mark, I have a question for you while we're waiting.
Sure.
If I were a business owner and I kind of feel like, you know, I'm stuck. I've asked for advice, I've listened to webinars, I've read some books, you know, and I just feel like it's not progressing in the way that I would like it to. What are some resources that I could use to help me get to that next level?
Well, I would say, you know, I think I would kind of try to drill into, Madeline, what you mean by stuck. You know, if you're stuck because the phone's not ringing, then I might, you know, bring in someone to talk to me a little bit more about, you know, digital marketing or a little bit more about the technologies in my business. If I'm stuck more on retaining people, I might want to look in the mirror a little bit more and, you know, understand a little bit more the culture or understand a little bit more my strategies and techniques in terms of the right kind of people. If I'm stuck in terms of just kind of understanding the fundamental numbers within my business, you know, I might want to, you know, tap my accountant on the shoulder and say, look, I'll take you out to lunch and we're going to talk about, you know, what the dashboard or key metrics really should be. So, you know, I think going back to your question, Madeline, it really depends on what you mean, what kind of stuck you are. And I think depending on what it is, I think you've got, you know, a lot of different avenues. I will say also, you know, there's some opportunities out there, whether it's through your associations or through like Professional Remodeler, the Remodeling Mastery Forum groups, things like that, that you can, you know, be out there and participate in different groups and not necessarily be out on islands by yourself. And sometimes, you know, just being with your peers, you know, in opportunities, that is a good way to, kind of keep your mojo and keep inspired and, you're not out there on an island by yourself.
I think that's great advice. Just, if you do feel like your company's stuck, kind of taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, figuring out where you are stuck. And then from there, you can really narrow it down to help yourself and your company grow. Thank you again, Mark, for such a wonderful presentation. I wanted to remind everyone that today's presentation is brought to you by Leap. Leap is a software that reduces errors and redundancies that slow down your sales process. Leap allows owners to take control of all the pricing and profit margins in one central location. Whether you're roofing, windows, siding, flooring, kitchen or bath, or any home service, you can use the power of Leap to make your customizable sales platform your own. I'm going to launch a poll here to see if you would like to learn a little bit more about Leap. If you answer yes, someone from the Leap team will be reaching out to you to set up a phone call to show you our app in detail and just talk to you and answer any questions that you may have about how you can use Leap to help your company. If you answer yes, we'll be sending you a gift card for lunch on us. And if you are a good fit with the company, because you attended today's webinar, we'll be offering you $500 off of our service. If you enjoyed today's webinar, like I said, make sure to keep an eye out in your email so that we can get you over that book from Mark's. And we also have a few of Mark's webinars that he's done before on our website at leaptodigital.com if you want to go learn a little bit more from Mark. Mark, do you have any last words from us?
No, it's, I think the times are very interesting. We've got, major tailwinds, but sadly there's some headwinds too. And I think, oftentimes we're just so busy, we don't put the time and energy, into the health and fitness. So, I want to thank everybody for just taking a little short 1 hour time out, taking the physical, and, hopefully you don't keep your results a secret. You also talk to the team about them. And I think, with the recording that you'll have access to, a great exercise is share it with the team so that they can score your business as well. And I think in doing so, it allows you to be not only better, but also a little bit more aligned. And with that alignment, you're really rowing together and being more successful.
Absolutely. Those are some great last words. Thank you so much, Mark. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Make sure you check in next week. We'll have another webinar with Roofers Coffee Shop. They'll be talking about the power of networking. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye.